Authority. And I'm just going to take a couple moments to kind of give a little overview of how we approach the emergency housing voucher program here. And we were lucky enough to receive 102 emergency housing vouchers, as you know, through the American Rescue Plan. And you know, we have a long-standing, decades-long relationship here with the Council for the Homeless, a local nonprofit that coordinates the continuum of care and the homeless crisis response system. And it really allowed us in the community to get a jump start on the planning when we knew that this program was in the works. So the Council for the Homeless was able to very quickly engage the different service providers in the community, some of whom are represented here today, convene the Continuum of Care Steering Committee, and really get everyone to think strategically about what was the best way that we could use those 102 vouchers, not just to, and of course, most importantly, help 102 individuals and families in their journey out of homelessness, but also do it by leveraging other resources in the community. So, you know, one theme that you'll hear through the conversation today is that some people were able to move from more temporary housing options to this better fit program, this longer term program, and then in turn open up spots in those temporary programs for other people who were in desperate need of that help. So we're very proud that through these different community partnerships, we were able to get all 102 vouchers issued in the first day or two of the program. And then sitting here today, I can say that we have over 70% of those vouchers leased up in those individual and families in stable housing, and we're doing more of those each week. So on that note, I know that we're all eager to jump into the heart of the conversation. So I'll turn it over to you, Senator Murray, for any opening remarks that you have.
All right. Well, Andy, thank you so much. And thank you for helping organize this. And thank you to all of our local advocates and officials who are getting that housing relief out that I worked so hard to include in the American Rescue Plan to people in Vancouver. And I really want to thank everyone who's joined us on this chat today who are sharing their personal stories. It really helps me understand what's happening on the ground and why this is so important. I think we all know we were in a housing crisis long before the pandemic. In Washington State alone, from January 2019 to January 2020, we had the third largest increase in people experiencing homelessness in the country, more than 1,300 people. And then during the pandemic, of course, we saw even more people really challenged with housing insecurity and homelessness, especially people of color and people with low incomes. And in fact, according to our Census Bureau data this fall, nearly 1 in 10 renters in Washington State were not caught up on rent. So I have been listening to people. I have spoken to people who are behind on rent, people who are facing homelessness. I've talked to housing providers around the state about what it's like on the ground for people, so I can be their voice here in Washington, D.C. And those stories that I've heard have really helped us make sure that we got that money into the American Rescue Plan, which you now are making sure are getting to people. So I really want to hear how that's working and the success stories. Not only because I want to hear it, but because we can't stop here. And we are working now on the Build Back Better plan with a more long-term solution for housing. And that is, of course, coming up for a vote here in the Senate in a few short weeks. We're putting the last details together. And I wanted to hear from all of you exactly how the dollars are working and what works best and what we need to keep doing as we deal with this issue that is impacting so many families in the state. So I really appreciate everybody being on this call, and I want to hear from all of you. So Andy, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for your continued long-standing advocacy around affordable housing, these issues. I'm glad that the Build Back Better plan got brought up. We're so hopeful of how that could transform, because we're about to hear some stories here, but for every success story, there's so many other people in need. So thank you. So now we're gonna hear from a few different recipients of emergency housing vouchers, and we're gonna start with Pauline. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Pauline, to share your story.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Senator Murray, for being here today. And much appreciate all your help you're doing there for all of us. Well, I'll be real quick. My story, how I ended up homeless, I really couldn't tell you that. I think maybe someone just didn't answer the phone that day. Guilt and pride kept me homeless for a while. I found the share and council for the homeless here in Vancouver, Washington. I raised 3 children here in Washington and got married and then got a divorce and raised the kids and went on and was very successful in life. Homelessness is a very scary thing. I heard you all mention a few things, and so what you know is that there are many programs out here for us to help us, but without the emergency housing voucher in place, I think our workers, their hands are tied a lot of times. I almost fell in between the cracks. I was on the HIN program and then received my Social Security, which made me not qualify for the housing that I was in at that time. I was extremely scared that I was going to be homeless again. And if it was not for the emergency voucher in place, I would have been. I don't know what was more devastating for me, to know I could be homeless again, or to see the look on my housing workers' face and those around me that they just couldn't help me. There's nothing they could do for me. I am housed. I have a very nice apartment. I have 8 grandchildren. I'm doing well. I'm looking forward to volunteering this year in the community. And it gave me at the age of 60 a sense of life again when I thought it was truly over. And so thank you very much for all the work you're doing up there. I would like to be right there with you. I want to help.
Well, thank you, Pauline. And we appreciate you sharing your story. And it looked like it might have froze there at the end. So I just want to double check. Were you done before we move on?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. It's nice to hear some of what your plans are now that you've gained some extra stability in your life, and we appreciate you sharing that story. I'm going to turn it now over to Aristotle if you're ready for your remarks.
Hello, good afternoon, Senator. Thank you so much for attending. I really appreciate that you've given us a voice today. And with that, I'm going to share you some remarks that I've prepared. So we know we're here to talk about solutions and possibilities. We're not here to talk about most of the problems because by now we're mostly familiar with them. That being said, what we do today could save many, many lives. I could tell you the stories of hundreds of downtrodden residents of Clark County. I could tell you horror stories of what I saw around me. Old men dying of cancer, dumped at the Sharehouse Men's Shelter to suffer alone. Things like that change young minds. Sometimes those changes last a lifetime. But I am here today to tell my story and how 2 very important organizations rescued me. I was homeless from May 2019 to June 2020. And in that short time, short comparatively to my peers, I have seen too much for a youth to bear. I have watched roommates dying in front of me because they either could not afford care or were simply too exhausted to keep living. I have seen people wandering around in the middle of the street, minds lost to unchecked mental illness. People I know should be in state homes, but instead wander, risking the lives of themselves and others. These people, every one of them, were children once, perhaps of loving homes. I have seen cycles of substance abuse unable to be broken by constant incarceration. The stress one faces when dumped back to the street with nothing but the clothes on their back and a record that disqualifies them from most jobs. How could it be possible to escape such a situation as that? I have seen men and women without fingers and toes because they were not fortunate enough to find shelter last winter. To be candid, I was once very judgmental of unhoused people. The media, my teachers, even some of my family members when I was young led me to believe that houseless people were in their situation because they simply didn't try hard enough. My time on the street was the reality check that I was retrospectively thankful for. My lived experience taught me what too few of us understand here in the United States. All humans deserve housing as a basic civil right, and no one deserves to live through the trauma of being unhoused in an unsafe environment. Given everything that entails for far too many youth. An upside I found after many, many months of healing is that I grew during this time. I grew kinder. I learned not to judge and to be more patient. And I learned the most valuable lesson of all. Whether you struggle with substance abuse, whether you're a felon or a boxcar wanderer, we are all simply human. And where have we gone wrong as a community that we cannot see that? However, Senator, the growth of trauma is much more violent than the growth of character. The things I saw and the things that were done to me, I would not wish on the most despicable human alive. Many police here in Vancouver take a heavy-handed approach to the enforcement of camping laws. And this must change in order for us to support the unhoused. Many patrol the areas known to us as safe havens, often to regularly rouse the unfortunate souls just trying to stay warm. Even after being sexually assaulted, I did not call the police. By then I knew, if anything, I was just inviting them to rouse my friends from the tents they so desperately needed to sleep in for work. Even when I managed to find a place to sleep undisturbed, a sleeping bag and a tarp is no replacement for a warm meal and a soft bed. Though I had a job coming onto the street, the sleep deprivation combined with the inability to find sufficient sustenance kept me physically and mentally from being able to hold it steadily. And I surely needn't tell you how hard it is to find employment when you come to the interview, holding all of your earthly possessions, no matter what spiffy outfit you found from the clothing closet. Luckily, a fortune I am grateful for every day is that Janus saw my struggle. They saw a person in me, and what they provided me was not just shelter, not just my own place. It is a home, my home, a place of safety and finally of healing. Comorbid PTSD followed me to my new home and still affects my ability to function. But I am away from the horrors I experienced and may never have to experience again, thanks now to Vancouver Housing Authority. This security has cushioned me, has provided me a place to properly heal. VHA prevented me from losing my housing when Janus could no longer due to lack of funding. I thank both of these organizations and credit them for my being here today. They saw my disability and provided me with a voucher that will keep me from the street until I am able to care for myself again. Without these programs, I would be back in the same place, enduring the same tortures. That being said, funding for these programs is a crucial part of reducing the amount of homeless youth and thus preventing violent crimes against these youth. Furthermore, the disheartening truth is that my story is one of thousands across the United States. It is a universal experience of the homeless everywhere to be looked down upon, to be judged and roused for just trying to survive to the next sunrise, especially now that the weather is turning for the worst and the shelters are already full. I can personally attest that the best sleep you can get when you are unhoused is on the bus 37 to Fisher's Landing, the steadiest and longest ride. I spent only 6 months camping and 6 months in the shelter, and I could not even exist around the area of downtown without someone trying to assault me in a physical or sexual manner. The lack of safe spaces throughout the 49th district has a direct correlation with the amount of violent and sexual crimes against the members of this community. We can do so much better for the members of our community. If we share the same compassion for the unhoused as we do the housed, so much can change. So finally, I ask you, Senator Murray, to invest in our houseless community, to reap the rewards of a new workforce finally able to work and stay healthy, a new wave of people able to save up for housing. We are missing out on a large portion of the population that could be filling our apartments, holding steady jobs, and participating in the economy. I haven't met a single able-bodied houseless individual that wouldn't accept just about any job if only the employer would accept them for their situation, whether it's a misdemeanor on their record or just the simple fact that they can't shower as often as the rest of us. We need to support our houseless youth and families to save lives and boost economic participation. My final comment for you, Senator Murray, is that I am not a number. I am not a statistic. I am flesh and blood, and I deserve not only to be heard, but heeded. Whatever this country's legislators have in the works for the vulnerable communities of Washington, I assure you it is not enough. I implore you, Senator Murray, to go home tonight with these words still on your mind, because then perhaps, with your faithful involvement, we can make the necessary and impactful change this country so desperately needs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aristotle, for sharing your story and quite eloquently demonstrating for us the life and death sort of consequences that are out there. We very much appreciate it, and I'm eager to see what I know you're going to accomplish great things with the stability that you now have. I'm now going to turn it over to Jacqueline to share her story and give some remarks.
Okay, first off, that was beautiful. My name is Jacqueline, and I am a person in recovery. So my story is very much so similar to theirs. I was in a domestic violence relationship that led me to being homeless. He was the sole provider of the home. And when the abuse got so bad that CPS stepped in and took our kids, I had to leave. I had nowhere to go other than a tent, which was actually given to me through a different church organization at the time. During that time, I struggled with addiction. It was the only way that I knew how to cope with everything that I had gone through, all of the traumas that I had lived. I lived like that for 7 years, not knowing if I was going to have a tent to live in or a sleeping bag to get covered up with or a meal to eat at all. My sorry, that was a super powerful way to put all that. My experience being homeless, I was also sexually assaulted. Didn't call the police in fear of the response that I was going to receive from them, and the pushback I was going to get as being a quote unquote snitch. And so I just stuffed it. And I don't know. I've really been through a lot of traumas before homelessness and during homelessness. And I learned how to fight. And unfortunately, that led me to a prison sentence, which now looking back really saved my life in regards to my recovery. I utilized the time in prison to really work on myself, to figure out where it was I wanted to go in life, what I wanted to do, and who exactly I wanted to be. When I was released from prison, I was blessed by getting a DOC grant for an Oxford house that funded my stay there for 3 months. Shortly after being released from prison, I started working. I got a job, but I was living in a all women's Oxford house and became pregnant. I stayed there throughout the duration of the pregnancy, and in the nick of time was accepted into the Open House Ministries family shelter on March 17th of 2000. My son was born on March 30th of 2000. And we stayed there for a few months where I was reunited with one of my other children and my husband and my husband. And from there, we got moved into transitional housing, their transitional housings. Later, CPS got a hold of me about my other daughter, who has now been returned home, who suffers from high mental health. And the apartment that we were living in is very small and is definitely not suitable to be able to manage a toddler and a teenage girl with severe mental health problems. This voucher has really given me the opportunity to have the space that both of my kids and I need in order to be the parent that I can be. Due to the high mental health of my oldest, I cannot afford to work a 40-hour-a-week job. I have to be home when she's not at school. So for me, like, I'm just really grateful. I pick up the keys to the house tomorrow. This would not have come in a better time. It has been a definite struggle with my criminal history and my credit score of trying to find someplace that has been willing to work with me. But I continued to work with my housing specialist. I think the word is to diligently. To continue to push forward and to continue to try to clean up the wreckage of my past. And so will forever be grateful for this opportunity and this blessing. And thank you.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your powerful story and for highlighting too some of the barriers, even with the voucher that you had or in the process of overcoming. Katie, we have maybe a minute or two if you want to share some quick themes that you've seen from your experience and your vantage point at Share before we do closing comments.
Thank you,
Katie, I'm not sure your audio is coming through.
Oh no!
There
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I'll just sneak in a little bit closer. I don't know if I can do this in a minute, but I'm going to try. I've worked for Share for 7 years. I worked in a shelter for about 7. I've been over here in the rapid rehab and support housing section for about 7 months. I think one of the most important things to point out that this emergency housing voucher does is it catches those gaps. We have gaps in services. Polly spoke to her having the HEN program, and then she received her Social Security and was not going to be eligible for that.
We're losing your audio again, Katie. I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry, you guys. Our internet can be funky. If you can still hear me, I'm speaking to the gaps in our system, and it's really about programs that people will become ineligible for. This emergency housing voucher has stepped in and provided there to be some safety and security longer term than a 1 or 2 year program. Also for our permanent supportive housing clients, we have been able to embrace the moving on HUD program, and I've been able to identify some of our supportive housing clients that have stabilized in housing, actualized, and are now just transitioned onto an emergency housing voucher where they are being able to live their lives, their best lives, without that supportive piece, but with that permanent housing piece. And that's where I think the most important pieces are, besides the fact that we get to have these wonderful people be able to have the safety and security.
There's many more just given the chance.
Yep.
There's many more out there just given the chance. We do fall through some of this, through some of those cracks, and I don't want to take up time. I do have a closing comment though when it's my turn.
Very quickly, if you just want to do a quick one, and then I'm going to turn it over to Senator Murray for her closing comments because she has to get to a floor vote.
Yes, Senator Murray, I want you to know that I know that you're fully aware of the sadness and all that comes with homelessness, what human being is not. What I want you to know most of all is that by giving the emergency grants and the funding for our outreach workers, like Katie herself and Andy and them, to be able to help and do their job, to help people like me that can go on to live a more permanent life with the permanent housing successfully, is what is the most important thing, because we don't need quick fixes. It doesn't work we know that. So yeah, just allowing our outreach workers to be able to do their jobs gives me life. Thank you.
Thank you, Pauline. Thank you, Katie. And thank you again, Senator Murray, for your time. I'm going to hand it back to you for any closing remarks you have.
Let me just say, you're all so courageous and inspiring. And I just want to thank you personally from my heart for sharing your stories. I know it wasn't easy for any of you, but I think you really put a face and a human being in front of all of us. For so many people who aren't on this call, who you've seen on the streets and who you know in your work. And it inspires me to make sure we are doing everything we can in this country to make sure people like all of you have a safe place to be at night, that you're taken care of, and most importantly, you're treated as a human being. So you inspire me. I will keep working. We will do everything we can to help your community get the resources we need. And I'm especially grateful, Andy, to you and all of your team for the work that you do, because I can fight for the dollars, but it's you and your team who are getting them out to people and making a real difference. So thank you so much for sharing your stories. Thank you for being a part of this, and I will keep fighting to do my part. So thank you all.
Thank you so much, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You.
Take care.
Huge thank you, Polly, Aristotle, Jacqueline, for sharing your stories. That was really quite something, even for someone who does this